Grand Rising, Grand Rising. Peace, peace, peace. Macadon one first in the building. Sorry for getting
Grand
started a
Rising.
little late. I had some information and stuff we had to take care of. Give everybody a minute to get in real quick. Send these links. All right, start this morning show off. We got a top story out of Tulsa world. Leading story for this rising is Freedmen call for boycott of Creek Nation. Loot federal resolution aimed at serving U.S. ties tribe. This story was updated 5 hours ago. States a group of Creek Indian freedmen have called for the boycott of the Muskogee Creek Nation, aimed endorsements of a U.S. House resolution that would sever government ties with the Oklahoma tribe. Muskogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band called for a boycott of the Creek Nation. General Counsel for the band, Demario Simmons said they are working with their national partners to call for all individuals of good faith, particularly so-called African Americans, to end business with the Creek Nation until the freedmen are able to enroll in the tribe. Our national partners have committed to helping us contact different organizations, different music groups that are coming through and actually performing at the Creek Nation Casino. But to put them on notice that they should not spend their money with an institution that is openly, brazenly, and boldly discriminating based upon race, Simmons said. Indian freedmen broadly are the freed slaves of Native American tribes and their descendants. The history is varied with the tribes. The Creek Indian Freedmen Band sued the Muskogee Creek Nation in 2018, seeking full tribal citizenship and calling for the tribe's constitution to be declared void and in violation of the Treaty of 1866, which guaranteed tribal citizenship for the tribe's freed slaves and their descendants, as well as those of Black Creeks. That lawsuit filed in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. is still pending. The 13th and 14th Amendments applied across the board. Here in the United States of America, Simmons said, everyone is subject to the United States Constitution, and the United States Constitution forbids discrimination based on race. The band endorsed Tuesday a resolution that would sever U.S. ties with the tribe. H.R. 1514 seeks to serve United States government to sever United States government relations with the Creek Nation of Oklahoma until the tribe restores citizenship for the Creek freedmen. U.S. Representative Danny Davis, Democrat the third, introduced the resolution in early March. As of Tuesday, it was in committee. Requests for comments from the Muskogee Creek Nation's executive branch and Attorney General's office were not returned Tuesday evening. The NAACP Washington Bureau Director, Hillary Shelton, sent a letter to Davis on March 30th to endorse the legislation. Supporting this crucial legislation is an honor and a privilege, and it certainly is consistent with our mission to ensure the political, education, and social equality of rights of all people, Shelton wrote in her letter. The Creek Nation signed a similar treaty that was an issue in the litigation resolved last year in the District Court for the District of Columbia between the tribe and the descendants of its freedmen. Cherokee freedmen began enrolling in the tribe in 2017. The Seminole Nation also signed the comparable treaty that was upheld during the disenrollment litigation in the early 2000s. The tribe attempts to remove freedmen led to the temporary suspension of its federal recognition. And that's the end of that deal. Let's see if we can pull up this resolution real quick to go through it, see what it says. Yeah, give me 1 second. Got the resolution here. This is HR Resolution 1514, and this is what it states. I have a copy of it. It says, to sever United States government's relationships with the Creek Nation of Oklahoma until such time as the Creek Nation of Oklahoma restores full tribal citizenship to the Creek freemen disenfranchised in October 6, 1979. Creek Nation vote and fulfills all its treaty obligations with the government of the United States and for other purposes. In the House of Representatives, Mr. Danny K. Davis of Illinois introduced the following bill, which was referred to the committee. The bill states, it's the same thing. Clause 1, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, and Congress will assemble. Historical findings in this resolution. Historically, the Muscogee Creek Nation or Creek Nation was comprised of a confederacy of separate towns, tribes, and people. Each town was completely governmental unit in and of itself. Among those people were the Yamasee, who were reported to have immigrated from Africa prior to European discovery of America. They need to stop that, but I'm going to keep reading this. As colonists and eventually non-Indigenous Americans began to inhabit this area, the new residents sought to civilize the Creek Indian. In the ensuing decades that the United States continuously and repeatedly attempted to impose, often by force, its customs, economy, religion, and political structure on indigenous groups such as the Creek Nation. Act 3, one American custom adopted by some Creek Nation citizens was the plantation economy and the reliance of chattel slavery as labor force. Along with enslaved Africans who were owned by Creek Nation citizens, there were also Creek Nation citizens of African descent and free blacks openly living as full citizens of the Creek Nation. In the 1830s, citizens of the Creek Nation were forcibly removed from their land in the southern United States and forced to migrate to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma, along a route known as the Trail of Tears. Among those persons forced to migrate were A, African individuals who were enslaved by citizens of Creek Nation citizens of African descent, free Africans living as citizens of the Creek Nation, mixed blood Creek citizens known as the Black Creeks or Creek Freedmen. Citizens of the Creek Nation were removed primarily by their traditional tribal town, and it was the town micros or chiefs who kept the tribal roles. This allowed Creek Nation citizens who survived the journey to reestablish their traditional towns in Indian Territory. Removal was carried out by the military, and approximately 24,000 Creek Nation citizens were forced to travel to Indian Territory on foot or by riverboats. Due to poor planning, organization, and indifferences by the federal government, thousands of Creek Nation citizens died on the way to Indian Territory due to exposure, starvation, and disease. 7. Even after removal to an Indian Territory, some Creek Nation citizens continued to hold slaves until the Creek Treaty of 1866 abolished slavery in the Creek Nation. In 1861, a faction of the Creek Nation known as Southern Creeks executed a treaty with the Confederate States of America, severing its relationships with the United States government. Members of the Southern Creeks held positions in Congress and military of the Confederate States of America and waged war against the United States during the Civil War. I'm going to repeat it again. And waged war against the United States during the Civil War. Other Creeks known as the Loyal Creeks, who generally resisted cultural assimilation, provided supplies, men, and support for the Union. A contingency of Loyal Creeks, which included substantial Black Creeks component, left their homes in Oklahoma and moved to Kansas to flee Southern soldiers and their Confederate allies. The Battle of Honey Springs was a major battle that had occurred in Indian Territory and loyal Creeks, including Black Creeks, valiantly fought against the Confederacy and their allies. Another thing to strike out as 10. In 1865, as the Civil War ended, President Andrew Johnson designated a commission to travel to Fort Smith, Arkansas, to convey a counsel for the purpose of negotiating a new treaty with the Creek Nation. The members of that commission declared that a treaty with the United States must contain certain stipulations, including that the institution of slavery, which has existed among several of the tribes, must be forthwith abolished, and measures taken for the unconditional emancipation of all persons held in bondage, and for the incorporation into tribes of an equal footing with the original members are suitably provided for. The Creek Nation's 5-person delegation included both leaders of the Lower Creeks and Southern Creeks. One of the members of the Lower Creek delegation was a so-called African Creek named Cal Tom. 13. The Creek Treaty of 1866. Negotiations occurred between 1865 and 1866, first in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and then in Washington, D.C. It was in Washington, D.C. where the treaty was signed, and upon signing of the 1866 treaty, the United States reestablished official relations with the Creek Nation. 14. The Creek Treaty of 1866 became the foundation, legal document of the Creek Nation, and established the Creek Nation as its known today. The Creek Treaty of 1866 declared that Black Creeks, also known as Creek freemen, were to be made citizens of the Creek Nation and to have all rights of other Creek citizens. I'm going to read 15 again. The Creek Treaty of 1866 declared that so-called Black Creeks, also known as Creek freedmen, were to be made citizens of the Creek Nation and to have all the rights of all other Creek citizens. 16. Article 2 of the Creek Treaty of 1866 provides, in pertinent part, say, as there are among Creek many persons of African descent, it is a stipulation that hereafter these persons lawfully reside said Creek country under their laws and usage, or who have been thus residing in said country and may return within 1 year from the ratification of this treaty, and their descendants and such others of the same race as may be permitted by the laws of said nation to settle within the limits of the jurisdiction of the Creek Nation as citizens, therefore shall have and enjoy all rights and privileges of native citizens, including an equal interest in the soil and national funds, and the laws of said nation shall be equally binding upon and give equal protection to all such persons. 17. Virtually identical clauses relating to the citizenship of individuals of so-called African descent within the Seminole and Creek nations was negotiated, agreed upon, and added to the respective Seminole and Cherokee treaties of 1866. Shortly after executing the Treaty of 1866, the Creek Nation recognized their constitutional structure, and in 1867, it created a new and expansive constitution which recognized and affirmed the full citizen rights. Excuse me on that, y'all. In 1867, it created a new and expansive constitution which recognized and affirmed the full citizenship rights of all Black Creeks. 19. In 1867, the Constitution did not discriminate against Creeks of African descent, free Black or Creek freedmen, citizens of the Creek Nation. 20. The fact upon ratifying the 1867 Constitution, the Creek Nation reconstituted its 44th traditional towns and voluntarily created 3 additional towns, freedmen towns, so the freedmen would have equal representation in the Creek Nation's National Council. Also in 1867, the Creek Nation gathered at the request of the federal Indian agent J.W. Dunn to identify and list the individual members of the Creek Nation. 22. As a result of that gathering, Dunn compiled a roll of the Creek Nation citizens which came to be known as the Dun Roll. Listed on the Dun Roll were all of the Creek nations, then gathered citizens, which comprise what and compromise Creek Nation citizenships with African ancestry, including Native Africans, free Africans, and newly emancipated, formerly enslaved Creek freemen. 23. Many Creek Nation citizens were forced to leave Creek Nation territory during the Civil War because of the violence or for various other reasons. The Treaty of 1866 gave Creek Nation citizens until July 15th, 1867 to return to Creek territory in order to be included on the Dun Roll. However, Dun completed his roll 5 months early and sent it to Washington, D.C. in February of 1867. 23 is important. I'm going to reread it again. Many Creek Nation citizens were forced to leave Creek Nation territory during the Civil War because of the violence or for various other reasons. The Treaty of 1866 gave Creek Nation citizens until July 15th, 1867 to return to Creek territory in order to be included on the Dun Roll. However, Dun completed his roll 5 months early and sent it to Washington, D.C. in February 1867. On to 24. As a result, the Creek Nation created a post-Civil War Citizenship Commission to review the applications of people who claimed they were Creek Nation citizens, who should have been included on the Dun Roll. The Creek Nation Post-Civil War Citizenship Commission reviewed several thousand applications, and it admitted over 1,700 individuals and their descendants between 1867 and 1895. Numerous Native, so-called Africans, free blacks, and newly emancipated freemen were among the 1,700 individuals guaranteed full citizenship by the Creek Nation Post-War Citizenship Commission. Again, 1867 to 1895, numerous so-called Native Africans and free blacks and newly emancipated freemen were among the 1,700 individuals guaranteed full citizenship by the Creek Nation Post-War Citizenship Commission. 25. In the decade after the Treaty of the 1866 was enacted, individuals of so-called African descent / Native Africans / free Africans and formerly enslaved African / freedmen who worked with all other Creek Nation citizens to attempt to rebuild the Creek Nation. Again, in the decade after the Treaty of 1866 was enacted, individuals of so-called African descent, Native African descent, so-called free Africans, and formerly enslaved Africans / freedmen worked with all other Creek Nation citizens to attempt to rebuild the Creek Nation. 26. However, many of the Confederate aligned Upper Southern Creeks refused to respect Creek freedmen citizenship rights. In fact, on October 1st, 1877, the Upper / Southern actions were rebuked by then Creek Nation Principal Chief Ward Coachman during his address to the Creek Nation National Council. As there are freedmen among us whose rights under the Treaty of 1866 have not by some been recognized, and in consequence there have been discouraged, are not improving or advancing as they might do, and the treaty related therefore being so plain that no one can mistake or misunderstand it. I allude particularly to those known as the McGilvery or McGilvery freedmen, who we know belong to our people, were here within our country when the treaty was made, and I have remained among us ever since. I would recommend, if necessary, that some action be had recognized that rights of all who under the treaty are entitled to citizenship and equal rights and privileges with us. 27. Between 1867 and 1895, the Creek Nation created numerous rolls of its citizens. None of these roles were created by the Creek Nation contained or listed blood quantum or signed out Creeks of African descent. Free blacks, Creek citizens, are formerly enslaved so-called Africans who were emancipated and accepted as Creek citizens prior to the Treaty of 1866. 28. Between 1866 and 1906, Creeks of African descent were an essential part of the Creek Nation community, as evidenced by their service in the important and high positions in the Creek Nation's government and other areas of Creek life. Again, between 1866 and 1906, Creeks of so-called African descent were an essential part of the Creek Nation community, as evidenced by their service in the important and high positions in the Creek Nation's government and other areas of Creek life. 29. 1887. Congress passed the Dawes Act of 1887 that stated, that's 29. The Dawes Act of 1887, Congress passed the Dawes Act. Number 30, the stated purpose of the Dawes Act was to prepare Indian territory for statehood. I'm going to read it again. The stated purpose of the Dawes Act was to prepare Indian territory for statehood. To this end, the Dawes Act authorized the transfer of most of the land owned cooperatively by the Creek Nation to individual tribal citizens. Again, the Dawes Act authorized the transfer of most of the land owned cooperatively by the Creek Nation to individual tribal citizens. 31. After the passing of the Dawes Act, Congress created the Dawes Commission, 1893. Congress tasked the Dawes Commission with identifying all Creek citizens eligible for land allotment in what would be known as the Dawes Rolls. 32. Congress then passed down the Curtis Act of June 28, 1898. Marked in is marked number 30, statute 495 of the Curtis Act. Discredit the Dawes Commission to create the Dawes Commission to create two lists of citizens of the Creek Nation who would be eligible for land allotments, which became the following: the Creek Nation Roll, which was purposely composed only of Creek Nation citizens with Creek blood. B, the Creek Nation Freedmen Roll, which was reportedly composed only Creek Nations who were formerly so-called enslaved Africans and devoid of any Creek blood. So I'm going to break this down again. Congress then passed the Curtis Act of June 28th, 1898. One second.
Grand rising to the chat. Peace, everybody. This is ridiculous. When Bones steps back in, I'm going to get him to read the title to this article so everybody can read along or find it and read it on their own time also, just in case anybody misses it this rising. Who we got? Grand Rising Macadon, Larissa Miller, Grand Rising Brittany. Hey, Bones, can you read the title of this article again?
The title of this article, for those just coming in, give me 1 second. This is the back it up. Tell
Peace
you
to
what's
Ron Redbird, Copper Tone Tony,
the
original one.
title is this is Freedmen Call for Boycott of the Creek Nation.
And that's Freedman with a D, right?
Yes, what's a D?
Freedman. Freedman.
Freedmen. Yeah, like a
Post
freed man.
post
Basically, they
slave.
trying to say that you oppose slaves. And I was reading from HR 1154 on what it states and going through the bill and everything. But as you break it down, what it shows you is the history of our people always being here has been documented.
Mm-hmm.
They know who we are. And as I'm going through reading it, how are they calling people Africans back in the 1800s when the term didn't even exist? When
Stop playing.
on the records, some people are not even African.
Stop playing.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why I made a couple of notes that by reading this and reading the history of the Creek Nation, it lets you know that we've been here. That even in the bill that went to the committee this morning, this bill is on the committee floor this morning.
Yep.
This rise, everyone. This is live action. This was this lawsuit was pushed through 5 hours ago. So this is happening in real time as we speak on it. So the information is coming to me updating as we speak. But basically, you had chiefs and members of the Creek Nation who knew who we are. And I'm to the part to where they let you know that they created 2 separate roles that they kept us off on purpose. That they created acts that the dolls roles and stuff, when you come to find out, it wasn't created for what they tell you it was created for. It was created for them to break up land and give it to who they wanted to give it to.
Wow. It continues. Come on, man.
You understand? I'm like, wow. Like, wow. Let me get back down to Article 31 of this resolution. Y'all give me a second. I have to pull it back up.
Peace, Golden Moon.
LJ woke up.
You said LJ woke up.
Daddy talking about Indians. Woke up. Say, Daddy talking about Indians. Hey, forgot about me?
What's that? What's that?
Pulling this part back up.
All right.
Okay.
I think I said peace to everybody. Yeah, peace, Golden Moon. That's everybody that I said peace to in the chat.
Okay, and again, this is HR Resolution 1154. Just pushed through or just put on the commission's table this morning. All right, I'm gonna read 31 again. 31 say, after the passing of the Dawes Act, Congress created the Dawes Commission in 1893. Congress tasked the Dawes Commission with identifying all Creek citizens eligible for land allotment in what would come to be known as the Dawes Roads. 32. Congress then passed the Curtis Act on June 28th, 1898. 30, Section 30, 495. I'll post it all up if anybody wants to look these acts up for themselves and have them on file. It says, discrediting the Dawes Commission to create 2 lists of citizens of the Creek Nation who would be eligible for land allotment, which became the following. A, the Creek Nation Creek Road, which was purposely composed only of Creek Nation citizens with Creek blood. B, the Creek Nation Freedmen Road, which was purposely composed only of Creek Nation citizens who were formerly enslaved so-called Africans devoid of any Creek blood, like they would know that back at this time. 33. The Dawes Commission, motivated by racism, I'm going to read it again. The Dawes Commission, motivated by racism, used race and Creek Nation citizens' physical appearance to segregate Creeks of so-called African descent, Creek freedmen. The true Creeks in the Dawes Commission estimate were listed on the Creek Roll, also known as Blood Roll. The Creek freedmen individuals of so-called African descent, regardless whether their ancestors were previously enslaved in the Creek Nation, were listed on the Creek Nation Freedmen Roll. 34. The Dawes Commission employed the high percent rule, by which any individual with 1 drop of black blood was considered black and therefore belonged on the Creek Nation Freedmen Roll. I'm going to read that again for y'all to understand what's going on at this time. The Dawes Commission employed the hypercent rule by which any individual with one drop of so-called black blood was to be considered black and therefore belonged on the Creek freedmen rolls. 35. The Dawes Commission therefore enrolled many Creeks of so-called African descent on the Creek freedmen roll, regardless of whether their or their ancestors were here, were ever enslaved. Oh, okay, one line too ahead. It's kind of jumping. Let me bring it back. The Dawes Commission therefore enrolled many Creeks of African descent on the Creek freedmen roll, regardless of whether they or their ancestors were ever enslaved in the Creek Nation or of how much Creek blood they actually possessed. 36. The Dawes Commission separated families by enrolling full siblings with different blood degrees and enrolling some family members on the Creek Nation blood roll and other Creek freedmen roll and others on the Creek freedmen roll. I'm going to read this again. This is very important. The Dawes Commission separated families by enrolling full siblings with different blood degrees and enrolling some family members on the Creek Nation blood roll and others on the Creek freedmen roll. The blood degree of blood quantum was originally to be used only for land allotment purposes. One more time. The Dawes Commission separated families by enrolling full siblings with different blood degrees and enrolling some family members on the Creek Nation blood roll and others on the Creek freedmen roll. The blood degree or blood quantum was originally to be used only for land allotment purposes. 37. Therefore, once the Dawes rolls closed on March 4th, 1907, again, once the Dawes rolls closed on March 4th, 1907, Creek citizens enrolled on the freedmen roll and their descendants would always carry the ugly badge of slavery, regardless of whether they or their ancestors were ever enslaved or and forever legally be known as Creek freedmen. 38. In 1970, Congress passed the Principal Chiefs Act, requiring the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole, and Creek nations to obtain approval for their voting laws for selection of each nation's principal chief. The Department of the Interior drafted a policy stating that it was not necessary that each of these groups has identified or similar regulations, but that three conditions are deemed fundamental to the democratic selection of a principal tribal official. One of three conditions stipulated by the department was that voter qualifications of the Creeks must be broad enough to include the enrolled Creek freedmen citizens. 39. On or about August 18th, 1975, I'm going to read this again. August 18th, 1975, the Creek Nation, though its National Council, submitted to the Department of Interior a draft constitution that, among other things, contained express provisions that A, stripped individuals on the 1906 freedmen rolls and their living lineage descendants of their Creek citizenship, and B, prevented the unborn lineal descendants of individuals who were enrolled on the 1906 Creek freedmen rolls from becoming citizens of the Creek Nation. 40. Before the Creek Nation submitted the draft constitution to the Department of Interior, the Creek Nation did not seek, obtain, or allow any input from Creek freedmen or individuals representing Creek freedmen interests. I'm going to read all these. I'm going to read this again. On August 18th, 1975, the Creek Nation, through its National Council, submitted to the Department of Interior a draft constitution that, among other things, contained express provisions that A, stripped individuals on the 1906 Creek freedmen rolls and their then living lineal descendants of their Creek citizenship, and B, prevented the unborn lineal descendants of individuals who were enrolled on the 1906 Creek freedmen rolls from becoming citizens of the Creek Nation. 40 was before the Creek Nation submitted the draft constitution to the Department of Interior. The Creek Nation did not seek, obtain, or allow any input from Creek freedmen or individuals representing Creek freedmen interests. 41. Minutes from the Creek Nation's October 29th, 1977 National Council meeting revealed that one of the express goals of the draft constitution was to strip freedmen and Creek freedmen descendants of their Creek citizenships and rights. The minutes state the following. When you go back to the old 1867 Constitution, you were licked before you start, because it doesn't talk about Indians. It talks about citizens of the Creek Nation. When you go down to the allotment time, there were more that was non-Indian or half-bloods or less who outnumbered the full blood. All of these totaled about 11,000, and there were only 18,000 on the entire roll. So there was only 9,000 above one half-blood. That's the reason they lost control. The full-blooded lost control. That's what we're fighting. This blood quantum, trying to get back and let the people control, because under the old Constitution, you've lost before you ever started. There were 3 freedmen bands that would outnumber you today as citizens. So if you want to keep the Indian in control, we got to take a good look at this thing and get us a constitution that would keep the Creek Indian in control. I'm finna read this again, because if you read it between the lines, y'all can hear and see what they did. When you go back to the old 1867 Constitution, you were licked before you start, because it doesn't talk about Indians. It talks about citizens of the Creek Nation. When you got down to the allotment time, there were more than what was non-Indian or half-blood or less who outnumbered the full blood. All of these totaled about 11,000, and there were only 18,000 on the entire roll. So there was only 9,000 above one half-blood. That's the reason they lost control. The full-blooded lost control. That's what we're fighting. This blood quantum, trying to get back and let the people control, because under the old Constitution, you lost before you ever started. There were 3 freedmen bands that would outnumber you today as citizens. So if we want to keep the Indian in control, we got to take a good look at the things. All right. Got to take a good look at the things and get us a constitution that will keep the Creek Indian in control. Ain't that something? 42. On October 6, 1979, the Creek Nation held an election to formally adopt the 1979 Constitution and replace the 1867 Constitution. 43. Section 503 of the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, Section 25, USC Code 5203, and effect since 1979, required the participation of at least 30% of those entitled to vote, or the result of the elections are invalid. The total number of entitled voters that Creek officials identified prior to the 1979 constitutional referendum did not include Creek freedmen. In any apparent effort to meet the OIWA election requirements, Creek freedmen and their descendants were denied the right to vote on the 1979 Constitution, and therefore did not vote on the 1979 Constitution. 45. Upon the dubious ratifications of the 1979 Constitution, the Creek Nation illegally declared that all freedmen were not entitled to Creek citizenship and would no longer be recognized as nor allowed to be citizens of the Creek Nation. Really? Let's keep going. Thousands of Creek freedmen descendants have been denied their Creek citizenship rights in a bold violation of the Treaty of 1866. In violation, 47, in violation of the Treaty of 1866, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the Principal Chiefs Act of 1970, and the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, Creek freedmen had been illegally barred from participating as voters and candidates in every Creek election from 1979 throughout the present. Again, in violation of the Treaty of 1866, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, the Principal Chiefs Act of 1970, and the Oklahoma Indian Welfare Act, Creek freedmen have been illegally barred from participating as voters and candidates in every election from 1979 through the present. 48. Currently, the Creek Nation operates under a principal chief elected in violation of the 1970 Principal Chief Act and the Treaty of 1866, and a national council constituted without Creek freedmen representation in violation of the Treaty of 1866. 49. Since 1979, thousands of Creek freedmen have continuously attempted to assert and regain their full citizenship rights by formally applying for the Creek citizenship, only to be completely ignored or similarly rebuffed. Oftentimes, freedmen applications would be informed of their denial via a form letter from the Creek Nation, which would include some version of the following language taken from a May 31st, 2002 letter from the Creek Nation to a Creek freedman application. And the letter states, "We are returning your letter and any other documents submitted for enrollment into the Muskogee Creek Nation because in checking the Dawes Commission rolls, your ancestors were enrolled on the Creek Freedmen rolls. If you will note from the copy you submitted, there is no blood quantum listed because they are not Creek by blood. When slavery was abolished following the Civil War, treaties were negotiated with the 5 civilized tribes, the Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole nations. The treaties conferred citizenship and the tribes on the Negroes who had been held in slavery by the tribes. Such citizens were referred to as freedmen. A Creek Freedmen, Indian, or African Black Creek Association was organized and continues to work to preserve the unique identity of number of Muskogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band associations and to protect their history, legacy, rights, and dignity of thousands of Creek Freedmen Indians. Beginning in 2004, 2 Creek freedmen litigated the issue of Creek freedmen citizenship within the Creek Nation Court in Johnson and Graham versus Muskogee Nation of Oklahoma Citizenship Board. 52, the Creek freedmen contended that they and all Creek freedmen were eligible for citizenship in the Creek Nation by statement of the Treaty of 1866, the Muskogee Creek Nation Constitution, and the Creek Nation Citizenship Code. 53, in its March 27th, 2006 opinion, the Creek Nation District Court declined to reach the substantive issue related to the Treaty of 1866. Instead, the court found that the Citizenship Board did not follow Creek Nation law, which mandated that the Citizenship Board process citizenship applications of the Creek freedmen. I'm going to read this again. In its March 27, 2006 opinion, the Creek Nation District Court declined to reach the substantive issue related to the Treaty of 1866. Instead, the court found that the Citizenship Board did not follow Creek Nation law, which mandated that the Citizenship Board process the citizenship applications of Creek freedmen. 54. On or about April 13th, 2006, the Citizenship Board refused to comply with the Creek Nation's District Court order to process the Creek freedmen citizenship application. On November 2nd, 2007, the Creek Nation Supreme Court unanimously revised the District Court decision and refused to rule on the applications of citizenship provisions of the Treaty of 1866. Number 55, the manner in which the Creek Nation is conducting a relationship between the United States and the tribal entity is not in the best interest of the United States government or the citizens of the Creek Nation and violates existing treaties and laws governing the relationship between the United States government and the Creek Nation. 56, The Creek Nation's current refusal to recognize the citizenship rights of Creek freedmen and to deny to the Creek freedmen all rights, privileges, protections, and benefits arising from citizenships in the Creek Nation equally and on the same basis as all other Creek Nation citizens, including without limitation the right to vote in Creek Nation elections, the right to run and hold office, the whole Creek Nation office, the right to receive funds and benefits available to all others in violation of the treaty rights extended to the Creek freedmen and the treaty excuse me, take a drink real quick. Let me read this. Creek Nation elections, the right to run for and hold office in Creek Nation, and the right to receive funds and benefits available to all others in violation of the treaty rights extended to the Creek freedmen in a treaty agreement between the United States and the Creek Nation in the Treaty of 1866 and the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. 57. The Creek Treaty of 1866 guarantees the Creek freedmen the right to full and equal citizenship in the Creek Nation. 58. The Creek freedmen are legally indistinguishable from other citizens of the Creek Nation, according to the Treaty of 1866. 59. As equal citizens of the Creek Nation, the Creek freedmen descendants are entitled to all rights, privileges, protections, and benefits arising from citizenship in the Creek Nation, equally and on the same bias as all other Creek Nation citizens, including without limitations the right to vote in Creek Nation elections, the right to run and hold office in Creek Nation, the right to receive funds and benefits available to Creek Nation citizens. 60. No federal statute or suspending treaty has modified the Creek freedmen descendants' citizenship rights as guaranteed in the Creek Treaty of 1866. I'll read this again. This is number 60. No federal statute or superseding treaty has modified the Creek freedmen's descendant citizenship rights as guaranteed in the Creek Treaty of 1866. 61. No amendment to the Creek Nation Constitution has been modified, nor could be modified the citizenship rights of Creek freedmen because those rights are diverged from the Creek Treaty of 1866 and not the Creek National Constitution. Oh, give me 1 second.
Mic check.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay, where was he at? Right here. Okay, let's do. No amendment to the Creek Nation Constitution has modified nor could modify the citizenship rights of the Creek freedmen, because those rights are derived from the Creek Treaty of 1866 and not the Creek Nation's Constitution. There has been, this is 62, there has been no act of Congress expressing any intent to abrogate Article 2 of the Creek Treaty of 1866. 63, the Creek Treaty of 1866 is a bilateral agreement negotiated and signed by two sovereign entities utilizing their executive and legislative governmental powers. The validity of the agreement has not been contested by the Creek Nation. The Treaty of 1866 is the supreme law of the land regarding the citizenships of Creek freedmen. 64. The Department of the Interior is obligated to protect the Creek freedmen descendants and refuse to recognize of the Creek Nation's governmental units such time as the Creek Nation affirms and restores Creek freedmen citizenship rights. By continuing to recognize the Creek Nation and its governmental elected informed under the illegal 1979 Constitution, the Department of Interior has violated and continues to violate its own precedent and policy, and has breached and continues to breach its responsibility to the freedmen descendants pursuant to Article 2 of the Treaty of 1866. 65. The Creek Nation has received and continues to receive federal funding distributed by the Department of the Interior for the benefit of individual Creek Nation citizens. The Department of Interior has acknowledged that the Creek Nation distributes funds under those federal programs in a discriminatory manner by excluding Creek freedmen from participating in and receiving of benefits of the program by virtue of their status as a Creek freedman. Now on to Section 2. It's a surveillance of the relationship with the Creek Nation. Section 2 of this article states, A, in general, the United States hereby severs all relations with the Creek Nation, including all financial obligations or otherwise, until such time as the Creek Nation meets all of its treaties obligation and other federal statutory obligations, including all obligations under the Treaty of 1866, the Principal Chiefs Acts, holding elections for tribal leaders that are compliant with the Act, and has restored the rights of all Creek freedmen disfranchised from the Creek Nation, as determined by a final clarification under subsection B. Compliance with the requirements of the Act. The Secretary shall coordinate with all departments and agencies of the federal government to ensure that every effort is being made by the federal government to comply with this Act. C. Reports. Federal agencies, not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this Act, and annual thereafter until the final certification under subsection. All departments and agencies of the federal government shall submit a report to the Secretary describing all federal programs under the jurisdiction that provide financial assistance and other services to the Creek, and the efforts undertaken by the department or agencies to comply with the requirements of the Act. 2. Until the Secretary certifies to Congress that the Creek Nation is in compliance with its treaty obligations, the Secretary shall submit monthly public reports to Congress on the status of the federal government's effort to ensure that all departments and agencies of the federal government are in compliance with the requirements of this Act. 3. Other freedmen Indians. Not later than 6 months after the date of the enactment this Act, the Secretary shall issue a public report to Congress on the status of freedmen in Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole Nations of Oklahoma, The report shall address whether each of those Indian tribes is in compliance with all treaty obligations and federal laws with respect to its freedmen members, the level of participation of its freedmen members in tribal leadership positions, tribal benefits received by its freedmen members, and previously or current efforts on the part of those Indian tribes to disenfranchise its freedmen members. Congressional certification. After the Secretary has certified to Congress that the Creek Nation is in full compliance with all its treaty obligations, and Congress approves the Secretary's certification by a vote taken on a concurrent resolution certifying that the Creek Nation is in full compliance with its treaty obligations, the final certification of Creek Nation's treaty compliance shall take effect. Section 3. Suspension of the right to conduct gaming operations. In general, the Creek Nation's authority to conduct gaming regulated under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act and to administer any funds from such gaming are suspended until such time that the Creek Nation is in compliance with all treaty and other obligations with the United States by its final certification under Section 2. Report. Not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the National Indian Gaming Commission shall submit a report to Congress detailing the actions that they have been taken to enforce subsection 4. Non-compliance. Recertification. If after certification under Section 2D, the Secretary certifies to Congress that the Creek Nation is not in full compliance with its treaty obligations or federal statutes that government its relations with the federal government, the provisions of Sections 2 shall be applied until Congress ratifies full compliance under Section 2. Private action. Any Creek freedman shall have a private right to bring actions for injunction, relief, or mandatory or monetary damages against the Creek Nation of Oklahoma. Officials of the Creek Nation of Oklahoma are federal officials for non-compliance with this act or for violations of the terms of the Treaty of 1866. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution or the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968. I'm going to read this again because a lot of people don't know what our Civil Rights Act was named in 1968. I'm going to read it to you again. The Treaty of 1866, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, or the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968. The appropriate federal court shall have exclusive jurisdiction over actions brought under this subsection. 5. The Department of Justice. Attorney General finding. Not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Attorney General shall issue a finding of whether the federal civil rights of the Creek freedmen have been violated by the Creek Nation, the Department of the Interior, or both. B of this section, private right of actions. Any freedman may bring a private right of action in a court of contempt, jurisdiction to compel the Attorney General to investigate federal civil rights violations and provide a determination of whether a violation has occurred within 180 days of submitting a complaint to a court describing a violation in writing. Next, Section 6. GAO report on expenditures of federal funding. On April 1st of each year, the Government Accountability Office shall issue a public report to Congress the following. 1. For each of the 5 fiscal years ending immediately before the report, the Creek Nation's expenditure of all federal funds. 2. An analysis of federal funds allocated by the Creek Nation's leadership for its members' benefits and services and for administrative and other purposes. 3. A determination of whether or not the Creek Nation is in full compliance with all federal regulations and laws regarding the management and disbursement of federal funds. 7. Section 7, definitions. And this act, 1, Creek Nation. The term Creek Nation means the Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma. 2, Creek Freedmen, Freedmen and Black Creek. The terms Creek Freedmen and Black Creek means individuals can trace their ancestry to individuals listed on the 1906 Dawes Commission rolls for the Creek Freedmen. I'm going to read this again so y'all can understand what it means when somebody trying to tell you another definition. In this writing, the definition for Creek Freedmen, and Black Creek, the terms Creek Freedmen, and Black Creek means individuals who can trace their ancestry to individuals listed on the 1906 Dawes Commission rolls for Creek Freedmen. Section 3, other freedmen Indians. The term other freedmen Indian means individuals who can trace their ancestry to the 1906 Dawes Commission rolls who are members of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Muskogee Creek, or Seminole Nations. 4, Secretary. The term secretary means the Secretary of the Interior. And that's the end of everything that's in HR 1154. Give me a second. I'm going to post it on the chat. So if anybody wants a copy of this, they can have it for themselves. And you can always read it. It's something very important to read. And once you read it and understand it, you can see what's going on. Breaks down a lot of things that went on in the 1800s and the 1900s. No sellout, you any way you feel about what we read so far, or are you tied up?
I'm listening.
Yeah, that was the end of that's the end of
you repeat that the ending of 1968.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 1968 Civil Rights, Indian Civil Rights Act that people think they were marching for Africans or Black people. But if you ever open it up and read it, it tells you MLK marched for the rights of the American Indian. So by default,
don't look at it with a veil over your eyes, people.
Do not. Just by reading what I read this morning, the article and stuff, you can see what happened. That they know who we are. And then when they came up with the Dawes Rolls Act, they purposely designed it to take us off the rolls. They purposely flipped it on you. It tells you that that act was never created to allow people in. It was created to dictate who was supposed to get land. And they flipped it. And why in 1979 they started barring this out when you read it? Because the real Indian, the real Creek, I'm not going to say Black Creek, I'm going to say the real Creek Indian is outnumbering the imposters. So out of fear, they remove us because they know you give us the right to vote. You give us the right to make our decisions for our tribal lands and names. What's going to happen? See, it goes back to the statement when I hear people say, we shouldn't be a part of these tribes because they got people in these tribes that don't look like us. Do we realize that they place people in these tribes on purpose that don't look like us to remove us from these roles so we don't get what our ancestors left for us? The smartest thing that we can do is trace your heritage, find your tribe. I don't care if everybody in that tribe was green, purple, and blue. We need to start signing back up. Because when we sign back up into our tribes, guess what? We stop them from stealing what's rightfully ours. See, we got to stop being blind with this color stuff. This blind colorism is why we're struggling now. So we're gonna neglect what our ancestors fought for. I just read what our ancestors put in line for us. I just read what they left us. Now, is it our ancestors' fault that we struggling, or is it our fault that we struggling? Because we want to be petty and don't want to take the time out to do the real work. I'm gonna be afraid of somebody because your skin is lighter than mine. I'm gonna be afraid of you because you're a European. That's a coward.
Y'all go to work scared?
Exactly.
Anybody go to work scared every day?
We collect checks from people that don't look like us and we cash them. We ain't saying these statements.
Mad when it's late too.
When it come up to us drinking and partying and drugs, when you go to the club, Your bartender might be Spanish. You ain't drinking at night, so I don't want to hear it now. We need to stop being chickens and cowards because our ancestors were not chickens and cowards.
Not at all.
We're not finna sit here and
you might be striking some nerves this morning.
Well, if I have to strike nerves, then maybe we need to strike nerves. and I mean no disrespect to no one. I love all my people. And it's out of love that I speak this way to my brothers and sisters.
Just got to open your eyes, people. That's all it is. Just open your eyes up. You got your eyes closed on certain things, but open on certain things, on other things. Just open it up, period. Just keep them open.
Y'all just find out why chiefs of the tribes don't look like us. Because we're not participating. Right now, what I just read, that bill that I just read, HR 1154, it's sitting on the House committee floor now. Our Aboriginals, brothers and sisters, stayed up all night putting that act together. It's on the floor now as we speak. As we're speaking, it's on the floor. So let's stop this foolishness. Let's start uniting. This whole colorism thing is a lie. It was created by design to stop us from working. How can you say that you're not going to pick up your ancestors' legacy because the chief of their legacy got replaced by somebody else? How did they get replaced, my people? How did they replace us? Because we let them do it. I just read to you that there's no law that ever been put in act that removed us. The only way it's being removed because we're not fighting and challenging it. HR 1154 is on the floor. Every American Indian should have their name on that list when it comes out to sign up for it. And if you can't do that, what are you fighting for? We just said Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creek, the Seminole. They're letting you know that all these records go hand in hand. So it's time for us to start. We got Aboriginal brothers and sisters all across this great land that's fighting, and all they need is for like-minded ones to come together. Yes, let's unite. How are we going to sit here keep crying about, oh, it's not fair, it's not right? But every day we reading from sources that let us know that the way is right in front of us. It's already been written, my brothers and sisters. The ink has been dried. It is our time to follow through. The time is now. Yes, we can study the past. Yes, we can dream of a better future. But if we don't work in the present, ain't nothing gonna happen. We have a start. We have brothers and sisters that's fighting for us to get our things back. What track the convoy spent from, because this morning, you have the Creek Freedmen's are suing the Creek Nation because in 1866, a treaty was signed with the Creek and the United States government that stated that every last one of us so-called freedmen, that when you find yourself on them rolls, you are a part of that. That they didn't start stripping you away off them rolls till 1906. We read about the Civil War, how the Indians got promises for fighting in the war. The last I checked, what soldiers dominated the South? Who? Who were the soldiers of the South? So who are them Indians fighting? Because every time they show you the book, and there's no disrespect, you never see a person of Mongolian descent on them front lines. And I'm going to say it again. This is no disrespect. I have love for all the Creator's people. But right now, my passion is making sure our people take our rightful place back. that constantly, that there's many tribes out here that are going through the same fight. And from days I hear people be like, oh, why should we help them? They didn't help us. What do you mean? We the ones that left them out to dry. We're the children of the ancestors that left our ways and ran to the cities. Are we going to start keeping this 100? Here before 1492. These records are here. Everything I read from you this morning, and I put it up in the chat and I'll post it again. Please read it. Know your history. Know your grandparents' history. Know your grandparents' history. We have always been here. Our birthright and our land rights are here. And they know it. And it's written down. But as long as you keep claiming African American, Black, or some other status that takes you away from this landmass, guess what? It's never going to happen. So I say again, as a whole, let's make it our effort to those who are meant to be woken, to those who are meant to be in the know. Let's build the road so they can find their way home. How can we sit here and have complaints that it was a hard time for us to find our way home? But we ain't finna sit here and leave the breadcrumbs for our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers, our uncles and aunties to find their way home. See, let's don't get to this point and turn around and do what the colonizers did, because then we become no better. How are we supposed to conduct ourselves has always been in writing. The way we treat each other and treat our land has always been in writing. The problem is we don't abide by it. We forgot our ways. We turned our back from working and tending the land to run to the cities for the promise of a better finance that we never needed in the beginning. So we know what time it is. And we say this, we say it constantly. This is a great time to be here, to be privileged with the information that we can take back and give to all our people. These resolutions, these treaties, our children should know them front to back like they know the latest hip hop song on radio. Our tribal ways and laws, we should know them like we know the cast of the latest so-called reality TV show. See, IMU, that's the problem I'm finna say again. If you don't do the research, how do you know the tribal name didn't come from the tribe? See, we have to stop this here. We have to stop being so picky with things that it doesn't allow us to do the work. See, people keep claiming, let's call ourselves this, let's call ourselves this. But if on my ancestors' records, what they left for me is marked down under American Indian, then I am the American Indian. And I am proud to say that name proudly. I'm finna say it again. If my ancestors left mechanisms in place for me as an American Indian, then I am an American Indian and proud to be it. Because it's sad. When we were running around here claiming that we were African, these questions that we say now wasn't nobody saying then. These same questions that people put up to stop moving forward, wasn't nobody saying then when you was a proud African brother or sister. Wasn't nobody saying this when they release Roots every year, and it's a fictional movie, but y'all don't say this when they have our children in these school systems watching it every year. All I'm saying, if you're going to bring that intensity, bring the same intensity on both sides. That's how we get out this situation. All this petty, 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 where that got you so far? Still stuck. So do what you have never done before. Embrace your ancestors. Love thy grandparents. I mean, truly love them. Find out what they did. Find out how they traded. Find out how they walked. Find out how they survived. Because obviously our ancestors survived before 2019. They didn't have none of this crap that we got right now. And they did damn good, may I say. Good enough to the point that we have life today. So I'm going to ask again, my people, if this is what we really want, let's stop holding ourselves back. We can do this. We have always done it. This is nothing new. We have been doing this since the birth of our creation. It's time to become tribal. While everybody else trying to be Americanized and this and that, no, we must become tribal again. That's why we fall short, because we forgot our tribal ways. That's what protected us. It takes a village to raise a child. Tribal. If there's one person in the community that don't eat, we all put food on their table. Tribal. If one of us have a problem, we all put solutions on the table to help. Tribal. And through times, we done called it different names, keeping it real. 100, being hood. But let's keep it what it really is, being tribal. Love for ourselves, for our people, because your tribe is your family. And I know we don't like to use that word, but I'm just using it for the ones that's new here today, so they can understand how all this ties in. Your tribe is your family. The next step after we do genealogy and we start tying people in to these tribes, and these tribes start getting tied into the land, and we get these numbers up, our next act is to start pulling these finances together to get our tribe self-sufficient. See, the same article I read from you let you know there's mechanisms so where we don't have to depend on the system, because it's our system. That's like the people keep running around telling us, oh, I don't want no parts of the government. So you're going to turn your back on your ancestors? Because your ancestors invented the original government on this land. The only reason it's not working for you because we never took the time out to learn how it works. I mean, think about it. How you going to complain about something and you didn't even take 30 seconds to find out how it worked? How many people know the chain of government on how you fill out letters, how you write politicians, congressmen, and senators to actually get movement going on? No, we ain't going to know if we don't do it. We need to start having American Indian politicians that answer to our narrative. We need to start having American Indian mayors, American Indian senators, American Indian commissioners in our cities. That's how we affect real change. Let's get away from the illusions. Let's get away from the trinkets, from the flashy stuff. Stop following the yellow brick road. There's nothing at the end of it. Why are we trading in our ancestors for an if? We know what our ancestors got, but we're going to trade it in for an if this experiment of America that they brought over here works. I'll pass. It's simple. None of this that we doing should ever be a burden. Because if we all pull a pebble, then this mountain get moved and none of us bust a sweat. That's what I'm saying, IMU. We are tribing up. Every day when y'all hear us on here, we're doing genealogy. And we got people here working. We're tying people back in to their tribes so we can have a voice. I'm finna say it again. Please take the time and click that HR 1154. Just like every last one of us should have a copy of the American Constitution on us at all times. How are we going to say we're going to be in this land and we want our stuff back and we don't even know the laws of the land? I mean, let's think about it. How can you battle your opponent if you never took the time out to study your opponent? I mean, come on. These people been studying us for so long, they feel like they got us mapped out. Or we can slap them upside the head. They're going to cry for 2-3 days, but they'll go back to sleep. It's crazy. We have to change this. We have to have enough. And I mean have enough to the point to where we're not talking anymore, my people. We're actually behind the scenes doing what needs to be done. We don't have to be all in the front street grandstanding on what we doing and what we making. Because normally when you're doing that, it ain't going to go through for you. But we need to start speeding up the process of us learning who we are. And if you know who you are and you have procedures and steps and you're not reaching back to the next American Indian to help you, then you might as well leave because we don't need that. That's how we got in this situation before. People who look like us, they get a hold of this information and want to hold it over our head. That's how we do it. This is bigger than just a social platform. This is bigger than a website on a YouTube channel. The end game of Auchtoctones Assembly is to get as many American Indians as possible to become self-sufficient. I'm going to say it again. The end game of Auchtoctones Assembly is to get as many American Indians self-sufficient as possible. To the point we produce our own food. We produce our own clothing and shelter. And I don't want to hear this talk, oh, it's hard, we can't, we need this, we need that. If that's the case, how our ancestors did it with no funds? Somebody please tell me how our ancestors built whole cities when they didn't even have the funds that we had today. Anyone? Come on. We just say no sellout.
Bueller. Anyone? Bueller.
So I'm going to say it again. We all have a choice. We were all given a choice. So when your story is said and done and your time has came and passed, what are you going to leave behind? What's your legacy? Because I say it every day. Here at the Auchtoctones Assembly, we fight for 7 generations ahead. We fight for the American Indian today. We fight for the American Indian of tomorrow. So it's time for us to start doing us. And I'm talking about us, not the colonized mind us that want to be blinging and flashy and all. No, the us. Our ancestors' ways were conservative. We respected the land. We respected our resources. We wasn't consumers and hoarders. If our ancestors killed the animal, they killed it for food, used the hide and skins for clothing. They didn't sit around here just wasting resources to waste resources. We got this. I like that, doo-doo. You can't build due to arthritis in your fingers from pecking on the keyboards. Dip your hands in Epsom salt and let's go. 100. You know, we got to get to the point and get out here. We got to get to the point and start doing work. That sitting behind a keyboard on a YouTube screen, that ain't work. It's a start. I call that an introduction, but that's not work. The work happens out here in your community. The work happens out here where you reside and lay your head at. That's where you do the work at. What up, Jay? Nothing much. That's where you do the work at. You get out here and you strive. Know your neighbors. Said it yesterday. Some people done lived in their neighborhood 5 years. Can't even tell you the first and last name of the people that live beside them. You should feel ashamed. How you live in an environment and you don't even know everything that's around you in that environment? I mean, come on now. And for those who are on computers and phones and watch all the American Indian informative information that a lot of us put out there, take your digital devices and make that go viral. Push it. If that's all you can do is sit down in front of a screen, then you make sure you burn them keys out because you don't share this information so much. Facts, doo-doo. That's why I say it all the time. I value time because time doesn't show sympathy. You can get everything back but time. So I don't waste mine. Yes, we got a fight ahead of us. But I'm going to say it again. If my brothers and sisters, we can all carry one pebble for each other by the morning sunrise, that mountain to be moved. Yeah, and Jones, even if you do got Asians and other ethnic groups around you, you still would want to know what's in your environment. See, we have to get out of this thing because somebody doesn't look like us or doesn't come from us, that they might not have information or resources that can benefit us. Facts, Trav. And we need more like it. More of us to stand forward to create these businesses and mechanisms for our people. Start teaching some of us how to have our own, the ones who don't know. But like I was saying before, if your neighbors don't look like you, that's not a reason to alienate them. That should be even a reason to want to find out more, especially once you learn that there's particular groups and people that get told certain information that we're not told. Because my question is this here. We in this fight for who we are. Somebody comes forward that has the records that can help like a couple of thousand of us. But let's say they come from European descent. Are we going to turn down the help because they don't look like us? Are we not going to take the resources that can wake up 2,000 more people because this person happens to come from Asia or Africa?
I want to know, actually. Actually, really, that's not rhetorical.
I mean, that's something to think about. Grand Rising Pamela Hall. If somebody has information that can save your life and your family's life, but they don't look like you, they come from another landmass, are you going to turn it down? I really want to get some feedback from the chat on this one. Would you turn down help for your family if somebody was giving you information that could help your family, but they did not look like you?
But we haven't. It's not like we having that bill that we've been talking about.
Well, we can consider this the prelude to it.
Yeah,
the prelude to What is Race Part 2.
Yep, there you go. There you go. I like it. I like it.
Oh, yeah, N. Jones, I'm not saying that you throw yourself. Yeah, if you reached out to get to know them and they don't reach back, then you move it forward. You know, I'm just speaking like on the ones that don't even try to know neighbors and don't even try just because you Spanish or you Asian or so-called the white man. I can't talk to you or I can't speak to you. But these same people go to this so-called white man and collect that check. I'd be confused. That's the part that confused me. Because if we say that we're not going to take help from nobody that doesn't look like us, now explain to me, how are you any different from the colonizer if we go that way? Because a lot of the resources and stuff that we need, there's going to be people who don't look like us that's going to be able to bring us that information.
Mic check.
Yeah, facts, Antonio, but that's the same thing I keep saying.
I was just about to read that.
And that's the same thing that people keep saying, oh, they don't look like us, don't work with them. But this where we have to be honest. Just like Trav say, who made the drawers that you in? Who made the socks, the shoes, the food that you eat, the house that you live in, the utility bills? That's what I'm saying. Sometimes we got to think.
Don't be half hating. How you half hating?
Because that's just like how people be like, oh, I ain't with nobody tracking me. Forget the government. But you talking to me on a cell phone that has GPS that's tracked 365 days of a year. See,
and
that's what I mean.
Exactly.
This is where we have to start taking in all this information. We are too far behind the 8 ball to start alienating ourselves from different people. When there's different people that and I know for a fact that don't look like us, that got boatloads and tons of information to help us in our situation. Yeah, Larissa Miller, that's what I say. If the help is genuine, then you take it. No, IMU, I feel where you're coming from, but time does exist. Time is nothing, just the distance from one point to another point. So time does exist, and time is not man-made. So you're looking at time as in numbers. Time as in distance from one point to another, believe me, is real, and it's not man-made. How many steps it take me to get from one side of the room to the other side of the room? That's real. You know, we have to start, we got to get, we got to fix our problems. And the majority of the problems and things that we suffer from is because we have all these ideologies that will put in our head and forced upon us to the point that half the time when we speaking, we don't realize we speaking the colonizers' thoughts.
I was just about to say what you said earlier. You said you know better than the colonizer. You are the colonizer if you're thinking like that. And who you learning from?
Yeah, they don't realize that's how the colonizer uses us against us. Because I'm going to say it again. If I control your mind and the way you think, who really controls your body? Facts, Jay. He hit it right on the head. Time is the only thing that exists. That's why I'm going to say it again. I value time because time doesn't show sympathy. Time don't care if you're young, old, rich, poor, American Indian or not. Yes, getting back to the land is the main key. So you ask yourself, how do you get back to the land? Through genealogy. What is genealogy? The searching through records and archives to find one's lineage. I'm like, it's crazy. But we gonna get there. Yeah, doo-doo, that's the thing people gotta realize. The thing with going so deep, you become shallow. Because going that deep under into a subject, but it has no applicational benefit to the people, what are you really doing? And I'm finna say it again. Going so deep in the subject to where it has no application to be applied to everyday people right now, what did you just gain? But back to the narrative again. I'm posting it back up again to let everybody know again. The article on House Resolution 1154. Just posted it back up in the chat. So if any people, I would advise download it, put it aside, keep it, read it, know it. It touched the committee floor. Right now, we want to say about 5.5 to 6 hours ago. So it's in motion now. And keep up on it because this is what we need. And it's basically the Cherokee freedmen, how they got them labeled, are calling out the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Seminole, because of what they did in 79. 1979, they illegally removed us. They stripped us from having the rights to vote. And you wonder how you got chiefs in there that don't look like you? Because we've been disfranchised. So I'm going to say it again. Because now that you know this, are you going to run away? Or are we going to step up to these tribes? Get as many of us to start tying back into the land and tying into these tribes. So now when we stand up and we go back to voting, we're voting in chiefs that look like you and me. We voting in council members that look like us that come from our struggles. It's just like anything. You the first three people in the party. Of course, everybody in there ain't gonna look like you. Why would you expect it when we already know what they have done to us and still doing to us? No, I am you. You age from time. See, and that's again what they say going too deep. I would advise y'all before y'all do like the deep studies, actually get familiar with a lot of equations and study. See, the way you're using time is different, but time does exist. Throw a ball up in the air, and the space between it going all the way to its highest peak and coming back to your hand, what describes that? I'll wait. Even IMU, if you look at cycles, cycles are broken up by increments of what IMU? Time. See, I don't care how deep you want to go and desk around and drop around it. The one thing that truly exists is time. Time is the measurement of everything else. Think about everything in your life you measured against what? Time. I'll wait for you to refute it, but I'm telling you, everything that's measured in your lifetime is measured on time. Time is the true, real factor.
Doodoo said, knowing when to sow, water, and harvest is best based in time. That is true. That is true.
Yeah. History, the history that you're studying right now is based in time.
Maya were and are timekeepers. It's another fact.
Like N. Jones said, the sun and the moon, that's the natural clock. So how can you say time isn't real if the sun and the moon on repetition follows the same cycles 365? By definition, it's called time. Yeah, let's now back to where we was here, because the time and divisions of time and increments of time, we can leave that alone. Probably pick that up on the back chat, Bill, because we can spend like the rest of the year on that discussion.
Hold on, you gonna clock that the rest of the year? No, just had to get one more time pun in there, Bones. Okay, I see.
No, I wasn't thinking either.
No, no, no. But yeah, back to the matter at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not? I mean, like you said, are you? How are you looking at the person that's giving you some information that you might need? Are you? I mean, especially
Are
if you're
you
not
look?
doing it every day. If you're going into work every day, even if you are the boss, who you hiring? Who you got under you? Who you got over you?
Yeah, basically.
Are you half hating right now?
Are you all the way faking right now?
That too. Yep.
Because I'm finna say, how can you have that complaint, but then you be like, oh, you go to your job and you work around people and collect checks. So you trying to tell me it's okay for you to deal with people that don't look like you as long as you're getting paid for it, but you won't do it for the embetterment of your people or yourself.
Or your
Don't that
entire
sound?
family.
Yeah, that sounds a little like on the indentured servant side to me. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean,
You're willing to stomach these people
slavery
for
was a choice.
money, but you won't do it for the embetterment of your people or self or environment. I'll
Hmm.
let that marinate. I'll just let that marinate.
Let's just think on that. Let's just think on that. Man, prelude to part two.
Yeah, simple. But that's what it is. It's very simple. We have to use common sense, critical thinking. We have to use what they took away from the majority of people in school. No, see, that's the thing, Antonio. Nobody ever says because somebody tell you something, you take it as law. That's the biggest mistake that anybody can make. That's even when we sit on this platform. It's the reason why if I read a story, a no sellout read a story, we post the links and the sources so people can read them themselves. It's just it's just that simple. Is that we can all read Moby Dick, and we all gonna come back with a different interpretation of the story on how to apply it to ourselves. So looking at it that way, all we have to do is take the information and you use your resources to validate it. Just like how I read the article, because we do the timeline and did particular studies on air, a lot of it adds up and makes sense. It's just like when we talk about 1865, we know that's the Emancipation Proclamation. Then they talk about 1866 and 1865, they emancipating Indians. Hold up now. Whoa. You get what I'm saying? By you knowing. So when you get that bit of information, you know it's credible because you know the dates and times line up to what's actually documented. That's why it's called research. You just can't take one thing and run with it as law. You have to get other things to stand it up against to make sure. But now that's also with genealogy. That's why we take the records of genealogy and we chime into what we know about our ancestors and people. You know, like if I was doing my grandmother, I know all my uncles. So once I see my uncles on there, okay, yeah, this is my family because those are my uncles, those are my cousins. You know, you go another generation back. Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same process. And you should use that on every bit of information you ever are handed in your life. Research and validate everything. And I'm telling you, even if I say it to you, research it. I'm human. We all human. Ain't none of us above being flawed at any given time. And it doesn't mean it has to be intentional. Before you can do, yes, you have to learn world history. But before you learn world history, you got to know yourself. If you don't know who you are and you learning somebody else's stuff and you don't know who you are, guess what? You just indoctrinated your mind. Yeah, Trav. Oh, we all do. Because we have to remember as well, we're not all going to we're not all going to agree. I end up hitting the wrong button, Trav, trying to read your thing. My bad. You can post it back up. I hit the wrong button. We're not always going to agree. We have to realize what actually happens. Some of us share particular morals of journeys that we've been through that allow us to see eye to eye. See, we're never always going to agree. And just because we don't agree, we can agree to disagree. Because the way you see something, the next person may not be able to see because they don't share the same experience, the same roads, the same journeys that you've been through. See, we also got to remember that as well. That yes, some of our journeys, we have certain stops along the way that's similar. But then we have to realize we all are different. We all have a different story. Just certain chapters got relatable things. Yeah, EJ Coppertone, peace. You will mess your mind up if you don't have knowledge of self first. That's how we in this situation now. They bombarded us with knowledge of Africa and every other place before we had knowledge of ourselves. And now you see why it's so hard for our people to shake this African stigmata? Because we've been brainwashed with it for so long. Yes, I am you. I hear you on claiming that you've been here way before a piece of paper. But let me tell you something. We cannot be foolish. Yes, you have the right to self-identify. But if you can't prove who you are, then you're not who you say you are. 1 2 1
Mic
2. You
check.
can
Oh,
hear me?
look, we mic checking at the same time. Peace, peace, everybody. Mic check. We good. Where we at? Know
Uh,
you. Okay.
I
Doodle
know.
said, know who you are in history. Time equals genealogy. Let's see. One of our resources, LJ Free said, one of our resources are each other. Discussions, fireside chats, tribal meetings, group builds, collective gatherings are all vital because we are truly powerful people when we assemble ourselves. Stop playing. Antonio's still singing Mario Winans in his head.
Trap, it'll be your name will be back regular in a second, and the slot and hitting the button when I slid up, so it'll be back. Just give it. I think it's like 300 seconds it did it for. All right, everything back to normal. Got it back right. Yeah, Trap, you was accidentally blocked. I don't know if you can hear me. 1 2 1 2.
You're good on my end.
Okay, all right.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
that
don't know.
matters either.
Yeah, I don't know what just went on. I had to go in and fix him real quick.
You breaking up now? Okay, yeah. He said I hear you. Everybody hear
All
you.
right, all right, all right. Got everything back normal. Yeah, what was the last thing you were saying? Because everything went blank on my end real quick.
Oh no, I was reading the chat. I can read it again. What
Yeah.
LJ Free was saying, one of our resources are each other. Discussions, fireside chats, tribal meetings, group builds, collective gatherings are all vital because we are truly powerful people when we assemble ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Stop playing.
Well, I am you. We're doing something about it now in real time, tying our people back into their tribe so they can tie back into the land. See, let me show you. I got a question, I am you, dealing with this situation. If us and Africans and other melanated people look the same, right? We look the same. So, if we know melanated people were here first, how do you distinguish between a melanated person from this landmass and another? We must do paperwork to prove that we're the ones that come from this one. See, that's the key to it. Why the paperwork is important. Because if you don't use paperwork, anybody can claim your identity.
I.e., James Woods and Peter Griffin.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. It's an easy start, just finding out who you are. Yes, we might not like it. Yes, we might feel like, oh, well, it was ours, it was taken. But I'm finna say it again. If Africans and Australians and other melanated people look just like us, and all these people are migrated on this landmass, if we don't use paperwork and genealogy and tying of records, how are we gonna know who really belong here and who don't? I'll wait. Facts, doo doo. Yeah, I'm the same way. I am you. I mean, because what we're doing is actually in real time tying people back to who they really are. See, it's I understand people get emotion and use emotions moving forward, but you can't get emotional in this type of fight because them emotions will cause brothers and sisters to lose their life unwillingly, and they don't have to go that way. The documentation goes far enough back, IMU, to prove that you was here. It's just like when I read HR 1145. In HR 1145, they're letting you know that what was done to us didn't happen to 1906. So how far you think you need your records to go back? We've been saying for 4 months now that you only need 4 generations back. So let's think about it. How many years ago would that be? We talking about the middle of the 1800s. On the article that I read, if you can find where your people was in 1850, 1860, when all this stuff was going down, then by default you proved who you are and where you was. We know Africans didn't come here till way later on to the 1900s, and they didn't come how they said they come, but the fact is they're here now. So everybody's mingled up, this and that. Anybody can claim anything if you don't have no proof. So if that's the case, you said I can come to your house and tell you your house is my house and you need to get out right now because that's mine. Think about it. I mean, seriously, you think about what you're proposing and what you're saying. By your understanding, I can come right now where you live, where you pay bills and utilities, and tell you that's mine, you need to go. Are you going to respect that if I don't have no paperwork to prove it to you that that belongs to me? I'll wait again.
Probably not. I am James.
I mean, and don't take the conversation, don't take the conversation wrong or anything. I like these type of conversations because we need to have open dialogues of different viewpoints. And that's the only way people can get a greater understanding of what it's trying to, I won't say trying, what we are accomplishing here. You know, there's no such thing as a bad question. Because if you don't know what you're supposed to do, ask. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, Antonio, because you don't want everybody always seeing the same way, because that's not true. If all of us showed up every day on this show and we agreed with everything everybody said, then we all wasting each other's time, because life does not work that way. Yeah, correct. We have no problem with challenging other topics and different ways of looking at it. And I'm still waiting on that answer. You know, me and you, we haven't talked in a minute, but yeah, I'm waiting on that answer. With you, by your definition and how you see it, you will be cool. You telling me you're cool if I came to your house right now, kicked you out of your house, took your car and said it was mine and showed no proof of it. No, no. I do not look at it as a devil's advocate. Especially not me. I look at it as conversations because in life you're going to come across people that got different ways of viewing things. So my question to you was, by you saying that, what paperwork and records gonna do? We know we always been here. They know we always been here. We should just take it. So by that, what you're saying is, if I came to your house, told you your house, your car, your food, your wife, your children, all that belong to me, and just kicked you out, you cool with that? You know, I'm not trying to change you or nothing like that. I just like having this conversation. Conversation like this, growth, shows growth. So I'm asking again, would you feel cool with that? You posed the question, so I'm bringing it back to you. If I came to your house, told you it belonged to me, told you your wife, your children, your car, all that is mine, you need to get out, are you cool with that? No, what I'm saying is this, don't twitch it. What you saying is paperwork and all that, we shouldn't have to do that because we always been here and they know it. I knew you always been living in that house, but I'm finna come take your house with no paperwork. Are you cool with that? That's yes or no. Peace, Michael George. Because that's the thing that people don't be realizing is that we can make it out of this, and it don't have to be so negative. Because I'm finna say it again. That's not how you got in this situation. We got in this situation through paperwork, the pen and paper. So how do you think you get out of this situation? Through pen and paper. You get out the same way you came in. Well, I guess we'll move on. That question. I feel you in Jones. But that's the part I was trying to get in IMU to actually think about. Is that if IMU, see, all that's useless because you're still dodging the question of the point that you made across that I'm trying to get you to see. Is that if you ain't gonna let nobody come to where you set up shop, no matter how long they was there, who had what, you done set up shop there. You ain't finna let nobody come take nothing from you without proof that it belonged to them first. So why would you think anybody else do anything otherwise? You get what I'm saying? Just like we ain't finna let nobody come tell us, oh, well, this is my house and I said it's mine and you need to go. Think about it. That's the same thing that's going on, what we fighting on now. As American Indians, it's the same fight that we fighting now. Yeah, it ain't no joke. That's why I'm going to say it again. Know the laws of the land. Know what you're working with. Know how the system work here. Because I hear people complain every day about the system, the system, the system, the system, the system. But they can't tell you how it even works. Because the same system people complain about is the same system that your ancestors got off in. Because they designed it. Exactly. Talk to your family. And look at that. She said 1887. We was already in them timelines earlier this rising.
Yeah, man.
See
Peace,
what?
original.
Peace, peace. And that's it. And like I told IMU, don't take it personal because for me, ain't none of it personal. It's just open conversation because in life, you're going to come across people that view and see things different. And my goal is not to change your mind or beat you up for your thoughts, and yours shouldn't be the same way. Exactly. IMU, that's what I'm saying. So, see what you're doing? You're like, if they came here with hustle, that's not what I'm saying. I'm coming to your house and telling you, get out because I want it. It's mine.
Mines.
Your house is my house because I said so.
I am Peter Griffin.
So are you going to leave your house because I said so? That's the question I'm asking you, IMU, not all other stuff you giving me.
I am you.
I'm keeping it simple to show you a
Get
simple
about it.
point here. Your house belongs to me. I'm telling you, get out now. Are you going to do it because I say so? Is anybody going to make you get out of your house because I say so? Even if I call, let's even add this into it. If I bought in the law enforcement,
Call the man on them.
if I called the man on you, can I make you leave out of there if I don't have no paperwork saying I have the right to? I'll wait. Because if you don't have the paperwork and identification proving that that's you, the owner, then you're not the owner. Just like how we used the analogy a long time ago. Somebody steal your car. You see your car 3 houses down in a parking lot. Can you legally walk down there and snatch that car? Or when the police come, you're going to have to show evidence that that's your car for you to get it back.
Yo, LJ Free said, "Your house is mine, Monica and Brandy style." Your house is mine. You need to give it up. Had about it. Yo, we're not trying to
I
be
had
funny,
nobody know.
right?
But yeah, like I said, we all family here. So don't ever. I said we've been had these discussions, you know, and that goes to anybody. Just because you don't see eye to eye with somebody that's in the chat or somebody that's sitting on the panel, you're still welcome. Because we're not going to see eye to eye all the time. We're going to feel differently about different situations. And I let you know again, I am you. You are my brother. I'm not trying to change your mind, and I'm just trying to show you how certain thought patterns can jam stuff up. How certain thought patterns will get you on the extremist list before you know it. You know, like I tell people, if you don't have experience with them lists, I advise everybody you don't want to end up on it unless you got 7 years of your life to play with. You say, how can we prove this genealogy, Antonio? Simple. By you having your mother's and grandmother's name, they have birth certificates, death certificates, grave sites, church records, and by tracing all these records and locations and addresses where they lived and the times where they were at, it's hard concrete of who your people are, where they was, and when they got there. Because if they telling us that they didn't bring Africans to such and such time, but we have records of our people living here 1600s and 1700s before America even got started, so-called started, um, what is that telling you? And it's not us just saying this. We're showing you records. I think it was the somebody else that was in the 1700s we was talking the other day. We have records to show that our family was here. Records showing my family here in 1715 by tracking down birth certificates, death certificates. You know, and you find these vital records proving who your people are. That's how you use genealogy records to validate yourself. Because you remember, all you're doing is tracing your lineage through birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, property records, tax records, home ownership. Yeah, I'm gonna say home ownership because a lot of our once you get in them census records, because a lot of them census records, you will find out that a lot of our ancestors own their homes. Exactly, Antonio. That same history, so-called history of slavery that they give you, you use that same slavery, you use that same history of slavery to prove them wrong.
Yep. Yep.
The easiest weapon to fight you with is the weapon that you picked up to attack me with, because you wouldn't expect it to come back.
Hmm.
That's why I say this fight that we have, it's not physical, it's mental. We have to get our mentality right first. See, this is the first wave of the revolution. And what did he tell you? The revolution will not be televised. Why the revolution won't be televised? Because the first stage of revolution starts in self. You can't televise what you're going through internally in yourself first. Change your mind first. Facts. It's like how I'm gonna sit here have love for my people. I'm saying I'm saving all my aboriginals, but at the same time I'm on the corner selling drugs to underage aboriginals and whatnot. But every day I'm speaking about saving aboriginals. Really? That's what we got to stay away from. The
Peace,
contradictions.
peace, Michael George.
Peace, peace. Because I'm gonna say it like this: no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And I'm not spitting it as religious text. I'm spitting it as I have knowledge of self. So I know who I am. What can you use against me once I know who I am? What can you do to a set of people that has not been done? Study our history. They have done everything to us. I fear no man. I walk on my head high. American Indian.
Facts. That's some 8 Mile. 8 Mile. 8 Mile. That's not our people, but 8 Mile.
Yeah, yeah. I get what you're coming from.
Tell these people
Yeah, you
something
got to
they
get the
don't know
mental
about
right. Because I'm finna say it again. If the colonizers control your mind, who controls your body? So what type of soldier are you really? If your mind ain't right, I don't need you in the battlefield next to me. Friendly fire is real. They say friendly fire, but that person that got hit by it, they ain't walking no more. I'm straight.
it.
I'm straight. Ain't too friendly if you get my drift.
No,
You
exactly.
understand? So that's why it has to be mental first. We have to have our minds right first. Our minds got to be connected back to the soil that we walk on. Think about it. Most of us walk around not even connected to the ground. We wearing shoes on our feet all day. When the last time you felt the soil? When the last time you felt the ground on your mother country on your feet?
Big old facts. Man, I can't even remember. That's embarrassing.
Come on, when the last time you felt it?
Man.
If this who we are, all I'm asking is, if this who we are, then let's be this.
Yep.
Let's know ourselves. Let's know our home. I'd be darned if a visitor is going to know more about my home than me. Then right now, the visitors know more about our home than us. That's a problem.
That's you know what? My homeboy just told me the other day. He is not an Aboriginal homeboy. He just said his great grandfather is from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Like his great that mean like his great grandfather came over here and was a Boston police officer. I'm like, that's not that far. That's not that far back. Like for you not to be from here, you know what I'm saying? And this is somebody who's considered an American right now. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like,
But
what's going on?
I even let them know this because we was talking about it last night. That we got Europeans checking our channel, hitting us up, doing their genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
We got Europeans, y'all, watching the show, taking the information and doing their genealogy.
Big facts.
So I'm gonna say it again. We're gonna let visitors know more about our home than we do. And y'all talk about fighting. For
Also
real, man.
letting visitors write the history of where we came from in the first place too. Because we are officially, I guess, believing that we're not from here either. Some of us, the ones with that veil.
And no sellout, you said the perfect word. It's removing that veil on what the American Indian looks like. Who is the American Indian? Because I'm gonna say it again. You could just go back to 1968 when King was marching for civil rights. He marched for the civil rights for who? The American Indian. He marched for public housing for who? The American Indian. Who was in the line with him? Who was getting beat by water holes, dogs being put on them, locked up, lumped up? Let it sink in for a second. So if all your ancestors that you see in history are marching for the American Indian and getting beat down, and everybody in the crowd, we won't say everybody because we did have other people that didn't look like us supporting the movements, but the majority of the crowd looked like you. So who is the American Indian?
James Duda said, if you're asking the same questions you were asking 7 years ago, then you're just a keyboard warrior.
Get that sprain out your index finger from typing all day. Yeah, Pamela Hall. Every time I think about it, oh, what you told me about the garden you had growing. It's not even my garden, and I'm sad. And like I said, definitely when you get that back going, send us the pictures. We'll definitely put them out there. Let people know that We're out here doing this for real. This is not talk. We're not coming here to these channels, getting together, learning each other's personalities and how to work with each other just for the sake of YouTube. This is for love for self and our people. It's simple. Yes, it is sad that we don't know IMU, but that's what I was stating at. That we spend so much time arguing on why we shouldn't learn this and learn this and learn that, not realizing everybody else know everything there is to know about us. We barely know ourselves and don't know about them. Almost slipped.
Almost. I had look. I was opening a jar. I was opening a jar. Like the old '90s. Was that So Deaf? The don't cuss on the radio. Oh man.
And that's what I'm saying, N. Jones. I have no problem against Asians or nothing like that. But you don't see them in the marches. So you have to realize, how is these people ever able to take our place? In the 1960s and 70s and all this, how was people able to take our place? In 1906, they told you how they did it. That they created a law and ran with it that's being fought right now. Letters being sent to Congress that they removed us and took away our Indian rights from us being able to vote and everything on our chiefs. That's how they got in the positions that they got in. And for all who missed it, I'm posting the case again in the article and House Resolution 1154. I just posted again.
Was the article? I know the when you got into the sections and everything, that was kind of deep. Was the article pretty somewhat short?
Yeah, the article is somewhat short.
Wanna,
it tells you. Open it back
say,
up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. If the article is short, we can run through the article again, maybe.
Yeah, I can. The brief
if you want to
post
post
the
it,
article, I can
post it so I can open it up too. Oh, I see it. I see it. Thank you.
Yeah, I posted
I
in
was
the
trying
chat.
to
Yeah.
get back to what Copper Indio said earlier. It was about the new piece Copper Indio.
Peace.
What did he say? He said the revolution definitely won't be televised as long as the news is curated, and that will not change.
Yeah, that's never gonna change. But then because that they won't change and they won't budge, guess what they did? They gave us the room and the inspiration to create Auchtoctones Assembly, the Americans Indian Broadcasting Channel and Development. So they want to be selfish? I say thank you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Travis said, "My thumb brown. I need a green one." We all need green thumbs. We talk about the food all the time. You need to start growing your own, or at least reading your food labels. You're gonna buy somebody else's. Mic check. Can anybody hear me? IMU. KEEPP. Keep Project. Crisis Emergency Evacuations, Preparations, and Preventions. I've read that before. I like that.
I'm sorry about that. I had to pull this article back up to run through it real quick for those who missed it. This is from Tulsa's World. This is the top story of what's going on now. It says freedmen call for boycott of Creek Nation. Lewd federal resolution aimed at severing U.S. ties from the tribe.
Shout out
A
to my
group of
mama for
Creek.
bringing that up to me this morning.
Yep,
This
thanks. Yeah,
rising.
tell her thank you. Yeah, this rising. That was a well needed read this morning. Well informative. A group of Creek Indian freedmen have called for the boycott of the Muskogee Creek Nation, aimed endorsements of a U.S. House resolution that would sever government ties with the Oklahoma tribe. The Muskogee Creek Indian Freedmen Band called for a boycott of the Creek Nation. General Counsel for the band, Demaro Solomon Simmons, said they are working with their national partners to call for all individuals of good faith, particularly the African Americans, to end business with the Creek Nation until the freedmen are able to enroll in the tribe. Our nation's partners have committed to helping us contact different organizations, different music groups that are coming through and actually performing at the Creek Nation casinos, to put them on notice that they should not spend their money with an institution that is openly, brazenly, and boldly discriminating based upon race, Solomon Simmons said. Indian freedmen broadly are the freed slaves of Native American tribes and their descendants. The history is varied with tribes. The Creek Indian Freedmen Band sued the Muskogee Creek Nation in 2018, seeking full tribal citizenship and calling for the tribe's constitution to be declared void and in violation of the Treaty of 1866, which guaranteed tribal citizenship for the tribes, freed slaves and their descendants, as well as those of Black Creeks. That lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. is still pending. The 13th and 14th Amendments apply across the board here in the United States of America. Solomon Simmons said, everyone is subject to the United States Constitution, and the United States Constitution forbids discrimination based on race. The band endorsed Tuesday a resolution that would sever U.S. ties from the tribe. H.R. 1514 and 1154 seeks to sever ties from the United States government relations with the Creek Nation of Oklahoma until the tribe restores citizenship for the Creek freedmen. U.S. Representative Danny Davis, Democrat, introduced the resolution in early March. As of Tuesday, it was in committee. Requests for comment from the Muskogee Creek Nation's executive branch and Attorney General office were not returned Tuesday evening. The NAACP Washington Bureau Director Hillary Shelton sent the letter to Davis on March 30th to endorse the legislation. Supporting the crucial legislation is an honor and a privilege, and it certainly is consistent with our mission to ensure the political, education, and social equality of rights of all people, Shelton wrote in the letter. The Creek Nation signed a similar treaty that was at the issue in litigation resolved last year in the District Court for the District of Columbia between the tribe and the descendants of its freedmen, Cherokee freedmen began enrolling in the tribe in 2017. The Seminole Nation also signed a comparable treaty that was upheld during disenrollment litigation in the early 2000s. The tribe attempts to remove freedmen led to the temporary suspension of its federal recognition. And that's the end of that article. And to break it down real quick over the last three parts, what they're telling you is that they're doing it now with the Creek because they removed us from their history. They removed us from having the ability to vote and elect leaders of our tribes. So we know about the $5 Indians. And if you put this all together in a timeline, all they did was move their people in, then created a law to ban us out of it, and they started voting and electing leaders. That's why you have chiefs that don't look like you. Now they also letting you know that the Cherokee in 2017 lost a lawsuit, and they must start accepting our applications once we find that that's who we are. The same thing as the Seminoles in the early 2000s. So basically what's going on, like we were saying earlier, we have groups of American Indians who have their records, who know who we are, that's taking this fight to the largest courts of the land and winning. The problem is in most of these cases, we're not doing our due diligence to know the information, to know what fights are going on, so we can be there supporting and also getting our acts in line. And that's the fight that we're having right now. Simple. It simply is. And now we standing to the point to where people know who they are. You have people that have been living an American Indian life since their birth. Know who we are, have their records, and they're fighting for all of us who are American Indians. And that's why I started saying, yes, some of these tribes have members that don't look like us. But are we going to let that stop us from claiming our rightful inheritance? Or should it be the other way around? When we go there and we see the ones that don't look like us, we make sure we get as many as our tribal members back to the tribe. So when it's time for a vote, we can inflict change to put it back to how our ancestors had it. But that's never going to happen if we don't play ball. Like I said, this resolution is on the committee floor right now as we're doing the show. So think about how many of us could tie back to Cherokee or Seminole that right now, legally, they have to accept you once you do your genealogy, and that's what you tie back into. They have to accept you. That these cases already been in front of the courts of the land, and our ancestors have won. But we don't know because we're not taking the time to learn who we are, to learn who our ancestors are, to learn the government that they instilled, that everybody else copied, to learn how the politics work to benefit us. How are we going to sit here complain about politics? But we can read during Reconstruction that in the South, the majority of all the Republicans were Aboriginals, aka American Indians. And at the time of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood, we were dominating politics. So they had to put a hit list out on our ancestors. Come on, man. All this stuff are things that we read constantly over and over. Black and white. Yeah, I am you. I got you. After the show, I'll send you a contact. So we have to think again. Why reinvent the wheel? If we have American Indian brothers and sisters and tribal members that's already got this paperwork signed and they moving, then we need to join them in mass amount of numbers. Yes, we have did marches and protests, but when have we ever did the standing up, marching under the combined flag as an American Indian? We have never. So how are we going to say it's not going to work if we never applied it before? Most of us are just coming into tuition of this information, some people. We have people that's brand new today. We got to remember a lot of the things that took away what our ancestors had happened in the late 1800s, in the early and mid 1900s. When we read in 1979, the Creek Nation and them were coming up with fraudulent laws to ban us from our tribe. We read in Congress, in the Congress resolution, that Congress know that we were here already. So if Congress know that we was here, the records show that we was here, and everybody else know that we was here, all we got to do is get the proof that proves that we was here. So I'm going to say it again. You got a lifestyle and ways sitting there waiting for you, your inheritance. And all it takes is doing your due diligence of finding out who you are, tying back into the tribe. And I'm not saying it as it's easy, because I know it's not easy, but there's enough of us to work around. We have people that do genealogy. We bringing in professional genealogists to move and speed this process up, to get our numbers up. So now when we stand and we speak, they have no choice but to hear us. But if we all broken up and scattered in itty bitty pieces across this great land of ours, we're never gonna get heard. So I say it again: the fight that we fight is the fight for the American Indian. I'm posting it again. IMU. I post the article and it has HR 1154 and 1514 attached to it. So if anybody want to read them, facts, doo-doo. Grand Rising, nonetheless. Glad you made it out here with us. Peace, peace, peace. So I'm gonna say it again. We know right now, at this point, that the freedmen have called for a boycott of the Creek Nation, and they're getting the federal government to remove all ties from the tribe until they honor the Treaty of 1866, which states every last one of us who trace back to the Creek Nation are entitled to all rights and privileges in funding. So you see why it's important again, my people, to know who you are. That people, I'm gonna say it again, oh, these tribes don't look like us, so I ain't gonna go. But now you know that these people are getting money allotted for you every year that they're using how they want to use it, because we're not doing our due diligence to claim our rightful spots back. I mean, let's let that sink in for a minute. That the life that most of us grew up in, the hardships, the struggles, we never had to go through them because the information was already there. So I say now that we done came into the information, are we going to allow our children to have the same shortcomings and struggles we had? Are we? Or are we going to make sure that the next generation of American Indians know their tribes by the time that they're developed and grown men and women? Are we going to make it our responsibility that the next generation of American Indian children know their laws, know the laws of the land, know the traits and trade secrets of their tribes and their families? Or are we going to take this information and argue amongst each other and leave our children in the cold to the devices of these wolves? So I'm going to ask again. We all have a choice. When it's all said and done and your story is over, what is your story going to say? When you ask, what did you do with your choice? What would it read? Choices have to be made, and choices will be made. And the American Indian will rise. And what we do today, let it be known, is for 7 generations forward. So the children of the present and the future will never have to struggle to know themselves. They will never be lost with our identity. That's the fight that we take on today. The same way our ancestors took this fight on for us in the 60s. And the ones that fought for us in the early 1900s. And the ones that fought for us in the late 1800s, in the mid 1800s, in the early 1800s. How are we going to sit here and say we love our ancestors, but we ain't taking the time out to know our ancestors, to know what they believed, to know what they stood for? When are we going to take the time to find out why so many times our ancestors got knocked to the ground, they was able to stand up and rise fast and look greater than what they ever did before? But if we keep turning our backs, why would we ever be privy to this information? If we're not willing to sacrifice to know thyself, but we're willing to sacrifice and know everything else, it's not going to work. As brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, grandparents and uncles, we should all be able to carry a pebble again. So this mountain becomes nothing to move for no one. We have to get back to our moral code to where if one of us is done wrong, all of us are enraged. We have to get back to our morals to make sure not one American Indian child ever lays down to rest hungry. We fight to make sure that there's not another American Indian family that has to beg and plead for a roof over their head. These are the real fights. Because I can't speak for nobody else, but I refuse to rest, refuse to feel comfort when I know there's millions of us that are fighting, clawing and screaming just to be heard, just not to be forgotten.
Facts.
So let's lead by example, my people. As we step outside to this beautiful land of ours, let's remind everyone who we are and why we are so great. Let's remind ourselves.
Big facts.
Let's take pride in our land. How are we going to say this is our country, America is our home, and it got taken from us, but we help disrespect it more than the people that's doing it now? That we litter it and leave it junked up more than the colonizers who came because we adopted their ways.
Yeah. Facts. I don't know where y'all got that from. Anybody that's littering willingly, openly.
We let them come over here and destroy our fresh waters of fish. Because I'm going to ask you, who you seen doing all the fishing in these lakes and canals in these places in America? If you haven't been to the South, come to the South. Go to the Everglades. You ride around, who's all on the side of these roads fishing, taking this fish home, not for sport, but to feed? We talk about it all the time and laugh and joke how I'm in Georgia. And how my neighbors and them, how they hunt rabbits and deers and squirrels and stuff. Our people still living off the land. They never stopped. So I say again, let's learn from the past. Let's embrace our future. But let's grind and leave no stone unturned in the present. And the time is now. There's no better time than now. Because we could have been any other place that's rising, doing any other thing that's rising. But we make it our business, our purpose, to unite every morning under one common voice, under one common cry. The American Indian has never been extinct.
Show me 65 million bodies.
I can show you 65 million of us still walking around to this day.
And
So my fellow American Indians, Aboriginal Americans, Indigenous Americans, we stand at the precipice to making real change, sparking real thought patterns, bringing back critical thinking. So let's write our story. We let everybody else write it, so why we can't write it now? Why we can't record our greatest feats? Why we can't pick who we deem to be the greatest of us. So on this rising, before we get out of here today, let's remember genealogy is the key. The key to unlocking that door to you finding out who you are. So we're gonna get there. Anything you got to say? No sellout or TMH Grand Rising.
Grand Rising TMH.
Grand Rising. Hope everyone's doing well. No, I mean you pretty much said it all.
My bad. I got got so into the letter. I ain't see you come in the room. My bad.
It's all good. It's all good. You was doing your thing. You was doing your thing. I mean, you said everything that needed to be said. And there's one thing I do want to say, and this is basically has been my experience. I can't speak to everybody's experience because I ain't never talked to everybody, and I haven't been in everyone's city. Many times when I've come across individuals that are, for lack of a better term, spewing that they're not dealing with anybody but their own kind, and they're hating on other races. Again, this is my personal experience, so if you want to come at me, come at me. But many times they scared. They hide behind that hate because they scared to talk to anybody except for anyone that looks like them because of fear. Again, that's been my experience. That's not everybody's experience, but that's sometimes the reason why people don't talk to other people, or they hide behind that hate. It's easy to be on Facebook and it's easy to be on YouTube. It's easy to be on these social media platforms and talk all big and bad till you got to go out in the public. Like you said, it's easy for people to put their cameras on things when things ain't looking good, but when it's time to turn your camera on and show what's happening that's good in the community, don't nobody want to do that. Or if you're having a dispute, you're having a dispute on behalf of your people, don't nobody want to do that because 8 times out of 10, people are scared. And also, too, many people work for the people that they claim that they hate. So with that, I'm just saying, stop faking, get real, do some real work, and show it. And I'm done.
I agree 100,000% on what you just said on there. Sell out anything you wanna say before we sign off this morning? What is rising? Yeah. Say that word again.
Yeah, try to get it out. No, no, I'm good. I'm grand. I'm grand. I got to get that word out. I'm grand this Friday. I hope y'all are too. Have a grand rest of your day. Appreciate y'all for stopping through. Peace, y'all.
And on that note, don't forget we put it up in there. Everybody, if you want to read it for yourself, I have a copy of it to know what's going on. It's in front. It's in the committee on the House floor. This rising. It's posted up in the chat. It's been fun. Till we see you tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.